Hi, everybody. I am Sue Hillyard, and I am here today with Rav Chahal, and we were doing a new episode of our up close and personal interviews with your favorite astrologers. And today, our favorite astrologer is Nia Fyler.
Hello,
Welcome,
everybody.
Nia. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you for hosting me. I'm honored and privileged.
Uh, as are we.
Well, I hope you feel the same by the time this session is over.
Oh, we will. We will. So Nia has been very gracious in allowing us to look at her chart as we talk about her journey with astrology. So let's go to that. And so why don't we just start with you telling us about how you got to astrology and where it shows in your chart.
Sure. So I think, first of all, where it shows is Uranus on my ascendant. And I think that's the precursor of everything. But I think, I have a Uranian influence in my fourth house as well. And yeah, and I have a lot of, I think the Jupiter-Neptune connections are um, also a part of it. I have Neptune in Sagittarius opposing Jupiter in Pisces. So, yeah, I think that's part of it as well. And my fifth house is ruled by Pisces. Yeah.
Yeah, so your Neptune's opposing Jupiter in Gemini.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. And how I got to
Same.
astrology is quite a nice story. I was given a scholarship to study at a spiritual institution in Montreal, Canada, back in 1999. It was an institution who was which was erected to bring people from different belief systems and religions closer together and have a wider understanding. It was funded by the UN. And I went there primarily to study under the school's headmasters, which is one of the world's best trance mediums. And the best mystics from all over the world used to come there at least once a year for the yearly convention. And as I was examining the school as a possible place of study for me before receiving that scholarship that enabled me to study and live there for free, um, I went to the convention myself. And Noel Thiel came to the convention and he gave special rates of readings for the convention. And of course, I jumped on the opportunity. And since the convention would already start at 8 a.m., we scheduled for 7 a.m. And he was staying at the other part of town. And I came in at 7, 8 minutes late, or 7:10. And I still remember him sitting there. And I remember the first thing he told me to this day. He said, I was up all night thinking what I should tell you, but now I know. He said, great men cannot afford to be late.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And I had a reading with him, and by the end of that reading, I was so taken by astrology that immediately I told him, okay, Noel, how can I study this? And him with his operatic baritone voice took out a piece of paper and a pencil. There were no phones back then, and wrote a number. And he said, this is the number of my colleague, Maurice Fernandez. He's going to be your good friend and your astrology teacher. And when I came back to my mother's house in Israel, I invited this guy, Maurice, which I didn't know, to have some herbal tea on my mother's porch. And to this day, he's one of my best friends and my astrology teacher.
that's
That's how
awesome.
I did astrology. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And for the first 9 years studying astrology, I never thought I'm going to become one myself. Yeah. 25 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, just one other observation. You mentioned the Aquarian influence. Your Pluto
Mm.
retrograde in Libra is in the 11th house, which is a natural
True.
house of Aquarius as well, which
True.
rules
That's
your
true.
whole chart. So you talk
True.
about being born to do astrology, right?
Mm, mm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and my Demeter series there is also talking about what I can give, what gifts I can give, through my service, Virgo.
Yes. And then that ruler being that Mercury, which is in your sixth house. Again,
Right.
double signature of service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we
And
love double
and you've
signature.
done th and you've done this before. I always look at Pluto retrograde as redoing, reliving, right? So you've done spiritual work, let's say,
Yeah,
astrology related.
I'm sure I did. I don't know if it
Mm.
was astrology related per se, but I'm
Hmm.
sure I did, and I'm sure that sometimes, over different lifetimes, I took advantage of it too. Like I'm not sure that I was this great guy all the time or great person all the time. And I think that my Saturn in Leo in the ninth
Uh-huh.
is part of that karma.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's a good point you make because I think people don't like to accept that we may have done bad things, made,
Mm.
you know, choices intentionally that may have not been right at the time.
Well,
But,
I think we still do to
yes,
some
of
extent,
course.
and if we're not aware of that, that's the worst possible condition to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I think I my belief is that we need to experience all different sides of an issue
Mm.
so that we have the perspective in order to do it. And I noticed that your Saturn is conjunct the north node of Neptune. So it seems like the intention in this life is maybe to use it for good rather than, to deceive or, hoodwink.
Amen to that, sister.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that wherever we have our Saturn, we're already more cautious about making the same mistakes all over again. We could be our own worst judge for that matter.
That's a
And I
good
think the
point.
worst place for us to forget about, like this most dangerous place for us to create karma in, is where our Jupiter is and where our Sagittarius is, and in the ninth house. Because that's where our dharma lies, and that's where we can think, hey, we have it easy and not give it enough respect or utilize it wisely.
Yeah, take it for
Mm.
granted.
Exactly. So well put.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I always add a few asteroids into a chart, and
Mhm.
we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and what what my comment was that the asteroids that show up seem to be a moving, uh, group. And it's like I'll take one out and put one in, and then so then when we do these interviews, I pull up the chart with the asteroids that we used last time, and I see which ones kind of match up with any planets, and I take some out, and then I'll look. Sometimes I'll look at the big list and see if there's any other ones to add in. But the interesting ones that I thought that there's a few that I thought were interesting that showed up that were still here. One was Medusa here with the south node of Uranus and conjuncture Neptune. And Medusa is I see it a little bit of a warrior, a big bit of a warrior. And Rav, you've studied her, haven't you?
Well, I'm studying her at the minute because I have Medusa conjunct my north node of the moon.
Mm.
And I always joke about the hair. I have curly hair.
Ah,
Doesn't look very curly right now, but I do have naturally curly hair. And for me, Medusa was demonized,
definitely.
and I'm still looking into her, like researching her, how the energy plays out in the birth chart. But with your neck conjunct Neptune, and your Neptune's retrograde as well,
And my
Nia.
part fortune, right? Is that my
Right?
Yes,
part fortune?
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So how have you felt like if you just think of Medusa, you just have to imagine the mythology, the way she's been presented and is presented. It's like what energies have mirrored in your own life, especially in the first house, right? She's actually more powerful and her power was kind of taken away, you know. And
And
then, she
demonized.
eventually, yes, demonized
Yeah.
and she's a lot, if we just take away the patriarchal myth around it, I would say there's a lot more power to her and beautiful. I would say her energy is beautiful, and we need to come back to that. So it's sort of like
And I
with
think it's more
yourself.
than beauty, though, because if it was beauty alone, it wouldn't be so creating such trepidation to the
Mhm.
patriarchy in that sense. I think that,
I was,
the symbology of snakes is
yes, but it's,
something that is immensely powerful, wise, and often sexual, free of constraints.
but like you just
For a
said, it's the
woman,
pit. Yeah,
is like something a lot of the patriarchy could not handle.
yeah,
What do you mean? Such
yeah.
a independent, free, wise,
Confident.
and in a way dangerous woman. If you look at her, she'll bewitch you with her
Yeah,
gaze.
yeah. For me, it was her the inner beauty. So, but because the inner beauty was so content within herself, of course, it radiates outwards, right? And that's where the fear would have kicked in for others,
Mhm,
so hence the demonization.
mhm,
Right.
But
The power, the inner
yeah,
power that she had.
yeah. And incidentally enough, all that is being conditioned by your Scorpio ascendant. So I just have
mhm.
a question for you, Nia. In
Sure,
your life, have you felt something similar where
I
maybe
still do.
your yes,
I still do.
just
And
yeah,
I know today that I cannot reveal myself, Scorpio, to the full extent because a lot of people cannot handle it. I have to
Yes.
compartmentalize myself, because for others, unlike to myself, some things that lie in harmony in my character lie in dissonance in the minds of others. I can tell you straight ahead, I'm very, very spiritual person, always have been since the day I remember myself. And I'm also a very sexual person, always have been since the day I remember myself. And I don't see them in dissonance. On the contrary, I see it as a paradigm that is of the old age of Pisces, of the patriarchy, of one of the, primary methods to control human beings in general and make them feel guilty and obedient, and women in particular, creating
oh
that
yes,
dissonance between heaven and earth, between spirituality and carnality, between spirit and matter. Instead of
yeah,
celebrating this marriage,
yeah,
honoring it, being amazed by its beauty and force, you know,
100%.
putting this immortal soul within this transient shell is quite a miracle by itself.
So well said.
Yeah. I was just going to add that it's interesting with your birth chart because you're picking it from where you left off as I look at this from a previous lifetime, and it's sort of like you've been liberated and deconditioning from patriarchal systems, beliefs, how you've been told you need to be rather than asking how do you want to be, right?
Spot on.
Yeah. And that Virgo ruling that Pluto. And I actually have exactly the same, whereas a similar generation,
Yeah.
it's releasing the guilt, and sometimes the mind can kind of you have a thought and you're like, where's that come from? Like, or you like made for myself, or you shouldn't
Mm.
do that. But I've learned to be more conscious of it personally and go, hang on a minute, who's
Yeah,
who's telling me that? Is
exactly.
it the patriarchal systems? It's definitely not my soul, Is it
Mhm.
the ego trying to just stay in
Which part
fear.
of me is speaking right now, and what's the reason for it to speak
Yeah,
and say what it says?
yeah,
Is
Well,
it
and
afraid? Is it feeling guilty, post-traumatic? Why is it saying what it says?
mm,
and here we have, Jupiter and Gemini and Moon in Gemini, the at least two parts, I would say probably multiple parts that have something to say.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I think that this connects a bit. You asked me before what I think are the advantages that astrology gave me in my life. And I think first and
mhm,
foremost, the biggest advantage that astrology can give us all is the comfort to know that
yeah,
when we see the symbology that is so in parallel, so in correlation with our lives, triumphs, challenges, fears, and strengths, our evolution, the things we
yeah,
care about, and who we are. The moment we were born, above our head, before we even met our dad or our mom, before any trauma occurred, that created behavioral patterns that to this day we're still working to change.
mm,
Before all of that happened, this was already in the sky above our head, and that's very comforting because this tells you that A, it's not arbitrary, all our suffering is exact, and B, we're not the ones to blame. We're not the guilty ones. It's all
mhm,
exact. We can continue to work with some humility and,
mhm,
a sense of sanctity and thanksgiving and throw the guilt away.
yeah,
You
mm,
understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, it is very that was that I mean, I think that's the reason that brings a lot of people to astrology is to understand ourselves, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And
And to psychology.
yeah,
Oof.
mhm.
and learn more and I mean, the searching. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
A sense of finding some meaning. I personally came to astrology because there was some answers I was seeking, of course, and it was more of a this doesn't make sense in terms of what was happening around me, what I was hearing, how things should be. And it was during my Saturn return, to be honest. So
Mm.
that's no
Fun time.
coincidence. Mm.
Not.
And I have to admit, especially evolutionary astrology for myself, because had astrology readings in the past, but they're very descriptive, very good.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting there thinking, this doesn't, okay, tell me something that I don't know. And
Yeah.
I remember when I first had the EA reading, it just made sense from the point of view of this has happened and this is what you're here for. And I remember because I've always been interested in coaching, one-to-one, helping people, the Virgo side. But it
Yeah.
was when evolution astrology came and I was like, this is a great tool to know yourself, that whole know thyself. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I decided personally to become an astrologer. And it was like this, people just know there's a reason why you're maybe feeling this way or you're having certain experiences, repetitive patterns, but there's a
Yeah.
way to overcome it. There's got to be a conscious decision making process. And that's one of the
I don't
reasons.
know if overcoming it is the term I would use, but certainly
Okay.
handle it better, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, handle it more
Yeah.
positively in an empowering, positive manner for you and for your surroundings. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
But, and that's part of the difference I see between, let's say, Eastern and, like Vedic astrology that talks about the south node of the moon as something to stay away from and karmatic.
Yes.
I think, as I learned in evolutionary astrology, right, that you cannot run away and forget from where you came from or who you are. You
Yeah.
just need to learn the tools of the North Node to balance it with. So it would
Yes.
be positive and empowering it for you and your surroundings.
Well, yes,
I
But
it
totally agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do too. And you're bring I mean, I look at the South Node is what you're bringing in. And it can be, I suppose it can be looked at as positive or negative, but
It's
it's
both.
it's
Yeah.
both. And it's the experiences that you've had in prior lives that apply to what your purpose is,
Definitely.
why you're here this time,
Definitely.
and what you're here to do.
So
Yeah.
just seeing it as something karmatic really cancels out all the good things you bring with you, and a lot of your talents and strength and experience as a soul. And
I've
basically,
yeah,
as a
I had
therapist over the years, the
yeah.
worst cases I've treated are with people who are stuck in the North Node, not in the South Node.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, they were like the
I
most
was
difficult cases.
yeah. I was just gonna add that one of the reasons why, being from an Indian background, Indian astrology, Vedic astrology is very popular.
Yeah,
I never resonated because every time South Node in the sixth, Pisces, sixth house for me, they were always telling me to run away from it. And I remember sitting there thinking, this doesn't feel right.
yeah,
It just never felt right. And exactly how you've put it, there's strengths from what we've learned. Yes, of course, in everything there's a strength and a weakness, but you take what's worked and link it with the North Node. Even if
yeah.
you have a skip step signature, we need to look at which node is the resolution node. Incidentally, Nia, you have a
Mhm.
skip step, right?
Tell me about it.
I'm seeing Vesta in Cancer in the ninth house, which
Hmm.
I saw that and I smiled. I was like, I need to know how you've experienced this in your life.
Interesting. Nobody ever asked me that. I need to think about the answer for a second. How would you characterize the symbol? Vesta in the
Well,
ninth house in Cancer.
well, Vesta, we
Yeah.
look at the
Sacred flame.
mythology, sacred flame, carrying the sacred flame,
Hmm.
and living in a patriarchal world in Cancer is kind of the emotional body being repressed and not being allowed to follow the truth. Ninth house, truth, beliefs, philosophy, right? So for me, your Pluto retrograde shows me that you have carried the flame before in past lifetimes and you've been blocked. Trauma has most likely come because of that. And Cancer being the archetype of inner security, 29 degrees is you accumulating this in this lifetime, right? The ruler of that is your moon in Gemini in the eighth house. You spoke earlier, you're spiritual, but you're also sexual. There's your signature. But
Yeah,
sexuality, not in the patriarchal sense. The
definitely
way
not.
people think of it is the natural sexuality of the divine within through the sacral chakra, right? You
Yeah.
have that knowledge of the sacral chakra, how to work the kundalini.
Amen to that again. Yeah.
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 So that's how I saw that.
I take it. I take it. Thank you for that.
Mm,
I
you're welcome.
think that as I saw it, so it's definitely about carrying the sacred flame and being loyal, to
Mm,
kindling that flame, whatever it is in your life. I mean, the sacred flame is an eternal flame. And here we are
mm,
talking about an internal eternal flame that needs to be kindled, not forgotten or left alone in that sense. And in the ninth house, of course, that can make people more spiritual, philosophic,
yeah.
you know, adhering to, what is beyond matter and into the realms of belief. But in Cancer, I also see it as, being influenced by my maternal lineage,
Hmm.
in a sense.
Yes.
And a
Yes.
lot of my beliefs and ethics are the ethics and beliefs I've learned from my mother. You know, I did not learn all of her beliefs, thank goddess, but I adopted a lot of them. Yeah. And I think that's a big mistake with a lot of astrologers, that a lot of astrologers think that if you have Cancer on your ninth house cusp, you're going to be conservative. because cancer deals with the past. But cancer talks about cherishing the past and wanting to, in a sense, keep the flame burning, And if your grandparents were conservatives and your parents were liberals, then yeah, you're going to want to be conservative again. But if your grandparents were, social anarchists, hard left, and your parents became conservative, you're going to want to become a hard left radical again because that's your past, your personal identity. Yeah,
Yeah. I also look at Vesta as your sacred work. That
true.
what the basis of the work that you want to do in this life. And I think you've expressed that, really well.
And I think it connects to that. I feel that parenting, being a good parent, is
Mm.
maybe the most sacred work I can do this time around
Mm,
because I was basically betrayed and deserted by almost half of my family, if not more. Both my parents eventually, and that's the moon in the eighth,
mm,
Yeah.
and being betrayed or deserted by the people closest to you, in a sense, that are supposed to be most loyal. And if there's one thing I learned from my parents is never desert your children. Be a good parent, And so that was an important lesson for me, and that's a definite flame I want to kindle my whole life.
and your Gemini moon can express it, which
I
is
often tell my child that she's the most important and gratifying thing I ever created.
hmm, I
That'd be
love that.
beautiful. Mm. Nia, you actually have in your fifth house, which is ruled by Pisces, your Mars and Venus in Aries in a
Mm.
balsamic phase, right? So it's a closing cycle happening.
Yeah.
You have such a strong chart to do with the masculine feminine balance,
Oh, yeah.
sexuality, natural spiritual sexuality,
Right.
because Libra ruling your 12th house rules that Venus in conjunct Mars. Um,
Yeah.
it's your chart kind of just speaks authenticity,
Off?
needing authenticity,
Yeah.
stepping
Thank you.
into your, I would say, creative power in terms of who you need to be, not even what you want to be. It's this that inner, repression from the past, blocks, whatever you want to call it. You're moving through the trauma, like
Yeah.
kind of not re-experiencing, that's probably the wrong word, but in terms of you having
Echoing,
to,
echoing those same traumas, definitely. Echoing
but
so you can overcome it, as you said before,
yes,
or deal with it
yes,
better. But you were
yes.
spot on before when you were talking about it because my whole life, the reason
Mm,
I did this gender change when I was in the middle of my life, and not before that,
mm,
was because the people closest to me who loved me the most and cared about me the most always whispered in my ear that if I want to have a happy life, I should never do it,
Mm,
and I tried to avoid it at all costs until the moment came that I understood that it's either upping the um, happy pills, or how you call them, the antidepressant pills,
mhm. Right.
or treating the problem, you know?
So you
And I
went to the
decided,
root.
yeah, because you can't be a person that helps other people find their inner truth and anchor and wear a mask yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
excellent point. I love it.
I mean, you can, but it won't end well. That I can assure you. I wouldn't go that way.
Neither do I.
Hmm. Not a pleasant road to follow. Not for you and not for anyone around you, for that matter. Hmm. Don't go there. Yeah.
But I want to.
Well,
So a couple of
full of
things.
temptations is the dark path,
Yeah.
as Yoda says, but they're all empty promises. Only hunger will be your share, not any satisfaction
Mm, mm.
in that sense. There's a saying in Hebrew that if you feed your desires, you like uh, not your passion, or your inspiration, but your desires, like your more bestial needs and craves, you'll only grow hungrier. If you try to satisfy it, you'll only grow hungrier. And if you let it starve, you'll be satisfied.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. They say the more you feed your carnal nature, the hungrier you would become. And the more you starve it, the more satisfied will you be.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah,
I've
that's a
just
good thing
I
about
just
truth. Even when you hear it for the first time, if it's true, it echoes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just had an image of fasting. After I don't know if you fast, but when you
I do.
fasted for like 24, I once did 72 hours, and
Uh-huh.
I swear I was buzzing. Like I was on a natural high. And
Definitely. That's
you're
physiological, by the way.
yes,
Tested
yes,
and
it
true.
is. Mm.
And
And
it's
that's the
also
image
a healing process. It ends up that our bodies did not evolve to eat every day. As hunter-gatherers, which was not a long time ago, we ate when we found food. There were
Yeah,
days we ate more and stocked up calories, and there were
yeah,
days we ate almost nothing or nothing at all. And those days were important days for our systems to recalibrate, repair, and heal, cleanse. And we took it away,
we did.
giving our bodies that time and a opportunity again seems to be very healthy, according to all
Yeah.
studies. Yeah,
That's what wild animals do.
yeah, and we're wild animals.
Yeah. Especially cats.
Well,
Um,
we're cats. I'm a
yeah.
cat. I'm personally a cat. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't put Asteroid Kitty in here.
Yeah, it's never too late.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, there's so many asteroids, so little time. And
Yes.
speaking of which, we were talking a little bit before we started. There's two pairs of asteroids. Let's see. I don't know which one to go for first, but I'll let you choose. We have Isis and Osiris conjoined in Leo in your ninth house. And we were talking a little bit before we started recording that by progression, Osiris uh, came to Isis and passed it up. So they came to a conjunction in what did I say? It was
2007.
2007.
2007. And then the other pair that I see here is Didymos, which is refers to twins, and Lucifer with your Ceres. And
Yeah.
Lucifer is the light bearer,
Yeah.
and Didymos, is the other, the other half, the twin.
Hmm.
So I'll let you speak to
Look, you'll
whichever
have to
one.
interpret that for me. I'll go for Osiris and Isis first.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not familiar with any of these, so it will all be new for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know the myth of Isis and Osiris, right?
I do.
Yeah,
Not to the extent I would be happy with, but a bit.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's always a learning curve, I think, with
It's not
this.
always, but
Yeah,
hopefully it is.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it is. I mean, if I don't learn, I learn something every day. And, and I've kind of jokingly said when I stop learning is when I die, will be the day I die.
Where's your Mercury?
My Mercury is down at the very bottom of my chart, stationary retrograde. So yes,
Now, that's a very strong Mercury. It's like an out of bounds planet once it's stationary.
yeah, yeah.
I always allegorize it to my students so they understand better that this is a time in which there's a synchronicity and velocity with planet Earth. We're traveling at the same speed in space. So basically, it's like those shoot downs at the OK Corral in the old Westerns, where you see the camera moving, 360 and these two gazing at one another in space. It's a time in which the energy of the planet is unrestricted in a sense, and that's why we feel it the strongest at these times.
Yeah, yeah. The energy is magnified at that.
Magnified, exactly. And in a way unrestricted. I mean, a bit like an out of bounds planet.
Yes, yes, yes. So, okay, so I had the same phenomenon in my chart of Isis and Osiris coming to a conjunction by progression, and it was for me at a time when my life was I was living kind of a mainstream, working in the tech field in a financial institution, which is, I mean, how how mainstream can it get? But I knew that there was something more. And I also saw the writing on the wall that the financial crisis had occurred and the bank I worked for wasn't doing well. And I could see that it wasn't going to survive. It was coming up to its Chiron um, return, which I thought was kind of interesting. And as it turned out, it just barely, kind of limped through the Chiron return and didn't survive. But the with Isis and Osiris coming together, so the basic premise of their story is that she remembered him. And to me, what so the I mean, there's a play on words,
Yeah.
remembering as in uh, recovering past knowledge, but it's also, you know, putting something back together. And to me, what it seemed like is that I remembered that I had um, a different that I could do things a different way, and that thing that I wanted to be in a different world where it wasn't patriarchal. It was more um, spiritual. And so I started doing things, to that end. I became a certified yoga teacher. I did a psychological astrology certification program. I became a Reiki master. I started doing past life regression, which led me to eventually becoming certified in it. And to me, that was all leading to what would happen when what I saw in my mind. I knew that I wasn't going to be in this job that I thought I would have for the rest of my life. Actually,
Well, isn't that always the case? Whether
yeah,
it's a relationship, a job,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And transient is everything.
yeah,
And the only constant is change.
yeah. Unfortunately, for those of
Well,
us
it's
who
the
have
first sign of life, this dynamic flow.
yeah,
If anything is static, you could be sure it's dead,
yeah,
you know. And that's part of, evolution. Talking about the learning curve. But people expect this, very comfortable road to ride on, very stable and soft, no tremors, no bumps in the road. And we forget that everything has a tide, a low tide, a high tide, once a month there's the strongest tide, and once a month there's the lowest tide. But within those parameters, fluctuations are natural and blessed, you know. It's when it extends and becomes too radical, too dramatic, you know, that problem occurs. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And it is hard. I mean, it's been hard for me to accept that everything is transitory, which, goes transits, hello.
Yeah.
Everything moves, but it's, it can be a good thing. It can, but then again, it can upset the status quo, or the idea that, oh my God, I thought that it was going to be this way forever. And
Yes,
uh-oh.
and again, it goes to the root cause that we talked about before, putting this immortal soul in this transient body and dimension of matter, in which everything is transient and, quantitative. I mean, it's not hot or cold, it's how cold or how hot is it, in comparisons to something else, the opposite. Nothing is perfect. And bridging that gap, because we feel that what we're going through is important and is special. And like Rutger Howard improvised the night before they filmed the ending scene of Blade Runner, we feel it's a shame that one day all these moments will be lost, like tears in rain, you know? But love is never lost. And that's an important thing to remember. Even if you loved someone or something that at the end you felt were not worth it, the love was worth it. The fact you love is worth by itself, is precious by itself. If the other side did not live up to it, well, a gardener knows many failures. Doesn't mean he stops gardening.
Very true. Very true. So is there anything about that Isis Osiris that resonates with you? And
Well, for me, again, it's the marriage of the feminine and the masculine in a way, you know? And seeing that marriage is something sacred and godly, not otherwise. I remember also my growing up, there were times I felt less gender dysphoria, and there were times that, it was so heightened that I really thought of making a change already, of going through the process, and was pulled back by people around me, by, exterior influence, by fear. And I remember when I was in my 20s, a trans friend told me that I could go online and do a check of my brain to see if it's feminine or masculine with the American Psychiatric Association. You could do it for free and anonymously, and I did. And it's like hundreds of questions that you go through. And at the end, they told me what I already knew, that my brain stands exactly in the middle,
mm,
neither feminine nor masculine, it's both.
yeah.
And that same night, I had a dream. I was studying in the university at the time. And I'm standing in front of my class in the university, but I was female. I remember I had short black hair. I was very beautiful, but a bit masculine. Beautiful breast, black fishnet tee, and black leather pants. And I was lecturing to the class, what does it mean to be androgynous?
Yeah.
So I understood. I woke up and I understood that even if I was a woman, I would want to be more masculine, you know? Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, my eye goes right to your Gemini moon,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right? A little bit of both, an even balance.
exactly. And that's how people know me by, because when I was asked as a kid, what do you want to become? Male or female? And I said, it's not either or. I want to be both.
Mm.
I want to be human, you know? What do you like more, vanilla or chocolate? Why should I choose? Day or night, spring or fall, city or nature? Damn it, it's the combination
Yeah,
that matters.
I love
And
it.
it's dynamic, like anything else. Don't try and put me in any box or any frame, you know? Maybe when I die, you can put me in one, not before that.
Uh, then my eye goes to Uranus rising
Exactly. Yeah.
in
That's
Scorpio.
funny. Yeah.
Mm.
I was born with Uranus rising, but
Yeah.
it's very exact. It's very exact. And that feeling of being different,
Mm.
a bit of an alien, not the same, thinking differently, being a radical, rebellious, and always waiting because your pace is a fast paced. I remember my mother telling me so many times, don't walk ahead of people, wait for people. It's not polite, you know? And in a sense, that's an analogy for many things in my life.
Well, yeah, and then my eye jumps to Mars and Aries, with Venus and Aries.
Yeah,
I'm not following.
exactly. Exactly. And that's a very strong planet, that Mars in Aries in my chart.
Yeah.
And it's on my south node. And a lot of my personal growth and evolution has been around letting go of the anger
Mm.
and utilizing my male energies in a way that when I look at it in retrospective, I could be proud of, you know, and not ashamed of. Because I'm
Yeah.
sure that the person I was last time around was too strong-headed in a
Mm.
sense, too feisty and combative and critical on the cusp of the sixth. So yeah, letting go, North Node in the 12th and
Yeah.
Libra, without becoming the victim and a martyr is what it's all about.
Yeah, surrendering and having faith.
And doing the work.
Well, let's see.
Beautiful.
I do have a progress chart, and
But
then
tell me, what does Osiris and Isis conjunct tell you? So,
well,
what's
the
your interpretation?
the I mean I kind of um
You
exemplify it,
mentioned,
I guess, in
yeah.
my chart, but Rob, how do you
Well, yeah, you know that I'm really looking into especially Isis at the minute in terms of her mythology and what she represents in the chart. I haven't got to Osiris yet, but I agree with what you said, that whole remembering elements to do with it. But you have to also remember Isis, if you look at her mythology, she was the goddess of I think the title I heard was of 1,000 names because um she was magical, she put Osiris back together. She was a mother nurturing her son Horus, to be the next king of Egypt. And when I see Isis in the birth chart, for me, it's coming back to your magic, your own magic, being able, the intuition, especially conjunct Osiris. It's that, like Nia mentioned, the balance of masculine and feminine, because they were basically, you know, as much as they were, brother and sister, they were husband and wife. It was like
Mm,
that emphasizing that masculine energy and the feminine energy in Osiris. Became the god of the underworld, right? So it was sort of like she ruled the land, he ruled the underworld, and that kind of night and dark, masculine, feminine, positive, negative energies, and that balance between them. So in the birth chart, for you in the ninth house in Leo, for me, it links back to your sun in Taurus in the seventh house. And you mentioned it. It's finding that balance within. Your life has been about that equilibrium, right? For
true.
the soul, not the ego, the soul. And that just exemplifies that they were shining their light, the creative power is in their kind of mythology if you want to connect to it. Because there has to be a connection to it, right? Because,
Mm,
like Sue mentioned earlier, we could put every asteroid under the sun into the chart. But linking for me, I would use with the asteroids an orb of 3 degrees. So for me, Osiris links to your chart more than Isis in terms of Saturn.
mm, mhm,
Looking at Osiris as maybe, having he needed Isis to put him back together.
mm.
But she brought back life, but though it was to go back to the underworld, he became more, not famous, but more renowned
Yeah.
because of her. So it's essentially what that means for you, but linking to your Taurus, your sun in
Mm,
Taurus at 29 degrees. Again, a closing cycle of your own power, right?
mm,
But
definitely.
linking to self-worth, self-value, and knowing that the people that you may attract into your life will be a mirror reflection of yourself in some format.
Oh, goddess, I know.
Yeah. But
Always.
yeah. And
Yeah,
I
it's
was
like in
just
a
looking
dream
at,
that everybody in a dream is really an extension of some part of yourself, you know?
yeah, yeah, 100%. I was just literally now looking at where, because I'm doing ISIS research, where is she transiting at the minute? She's
Mm.
actually 27 degrees of Pisces. So she's
Wow.
right opposite your Ceres in the
Mm.
11th house.
Yeah.
Um, so that opposition happening at the minute of her magic and power to do with Ceres nurturing. So maybe
Mm.
this conversation is nurturing on a deep level.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Definitely. And when I think of it, Isis is associated in previous mythologies with Ishtar and
Yes.
even before that with Inanna,
Hmm.
which I connect to on a very, very deep level because Inanna, even more than Ishtar, by the time Egypt is erected, they divide the two sides of the feminine. Isis has her Litten side that we know, and she has her, you know, dark side, if you will, which is Sekhmet, the goddess with the white lion head, which is the avenger and destroyer part of the feminine.
Mm.
And goddess help whoever her wrath is directed at. And that those two sides were always connected, before that. When we come to Ishtar and when we come to Inanna, they always had two sides. They were very strong feminine figures. They didn't have only the side of the beautiful Botticelli curly-haired blonde from Cyprus, and the foam of the seashell with the angels around her, goddess of love and beauty, a good place to do my nails. It wasn't always about that. She had a wrathful side as well that her vengeance would be exercised against the unworthy and unjust. She would be feared as well. She is depicted standing on two lions,
Yeah.
powerful. And on the entrance in Sumeria to her uh, um, temples were written two sentences. One was, to you, Inanna, is to create worlds and destroy them. And the second was, to you, Inanna, is to make men into women and women into men.
Wow.
Yeah, and all our priests and clerics and priestesses were transgender. And they would even take certain plants as hormonal treatments. And this all ended when Greece took over and looked upon it, and ridiculed. Like, who are those men dressed in dresses with makeup on? And that was, pushed away.
Yeah.
And now it's coming back.
Hmm.
Remember information that we've lost, talking about remembering, that we've forgotten. Yeah.
So, speaking of forgotten and remembering and voices and Aries and Mars,
Yeah.
another asteroid that I noticed in here is that Cassandra
Mm.
is conjunct your Venus and Mars. Um,
Indeed.
on one side of Venus, but still conjunct both of them
Yeah,
because they're
definitely.
so close together. And Cassandra, in my understanding, is about the potentially losing your voice and finding it again,
Mm.
and or speaking up for yourself, or
Yeah.
and I mean you've kind of talked about that with coming to terms with your anger, which is a big Aries thing, I would presume. Um,
Yeah.
Mars and Aries, but do you have anything else to add to
Hmm.
that?
Sure. I think that I deal with um, feeling that I'm not legitimate in some sense
Mm.
all through my life. It began when I was a small kid, a child of two hippies, that brought me up on very different values from my surroundings, hippie values. And that difference, always seemed, being spiritual, being, all about Eastern philosophy and really the being very alternative. And back in the 80s and 90s, this wasn't accepted as much as it is today. That was always shone upon. So being not taken seriously in a way. Losing your voice is not being heard, you know, in a sense.
Absolutely.
And so it started with that, and then with being too feminine in the eyes of other people as male, and needing to find my voice as a male because I was suffering, you know. And after I grew my tasks, like elephant tasks, and fine tasks those were, I could finally let go of them, you know. And and then again, dealing with losing your voice, being a white privileged male, and suddenly experiencing on your skin all the statistics that I used to, you know, um, correspond because I used to work in PR. for non-governmental organizations, part of which were LGBTQ organizations and especially trans organizations. So I knew all the statistics, but I never thought I would become part of them and that it would be this hard and this heartbreaking for somebody that was powerful, privileged, well-centered, I mean, and with such a support group around me. I never thought that, it would be this hard and this heartbreaking. So again, finding my voice even right now, again, as an astrologer, because I was very active for a long time. And then 5 years ago, when I underwent this transition and, smacked me in the face, well, humanity smacked me in the face. Um, and I'm still recovering from that knockout. I still haven't regained the trajectory and power that I had before. Of course, you can't or don't want to return to the place you were before, but to whatever is ahead of you. But in a way, I landed 5 years ago, but I haven't taken off really again. I'm still in transit, waiting on the ground, for developments in a sense, to a certain completion that I feel that needs to happen. And I know that to the latest by the end of 2026, that would happen. I remember long time ago looking at the years ahead in my chart and understanding that 2019 to 2026 are going to be probably my hardest years. And I'm looking forward to seeing this in my past, you know? But it's not done yet. I'm undergoing operation in 2 months, God is willing, that I would have to recover from. And then hopefully my transition will be complete.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. So, with that, shall we move on and look a little bit at your progress chart to where we are now?
Sure. I would love that. Thank you.
So, one thing that pops out to me right off the bat is that your progress lunar phase is approaching the closing square.
Fun, fun, fun.
Yeah, yeah, and in Aries, which is beginnings, and
Yeah.
going over your Venus and Mars, and also the other thing I didn't mention before we moved on is that Eris is also in that Aries area.
Yeah.
And to me that I would think speaks to the fact that you are speaking, you know, speaking up about this and speaking for people who have been kind of the suffered from this or have I don't want to say the underdog, but
But it's true.
but it is
Yeah.
I always rooted for the underdog.
yeah, yeah.
I think Aries, talking about demonized females in mythology,
Mm.
is a feminist figure, that
Mhm.
did not feel comfortable adhering to the social conduct and politically correctness of others,
Yes.
and she liked to tell the truth as it is
Yes.
and even push people's buttons. She needs to learn some diplomacy, that girl, that's for sure, for her own good, but In a way, she tells it like it is. But she's in Aries for 100 years, you know?
Oh, yeah,
So
more like
in
four
progressions,
400 or something. Yeah, a long time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we are all born with Aries and Aries in that
Yes.
sense. And I think the house placement and aspects that she throws to other stars, planets, I'm sorry, is very important in the chart because
Well,
of it.
speaking of which, it's opposite your Pluto, and I have heard some astrologers.
And squaring my progressed sun.
Right, exactly. Yes, and I have heard some astrologers uh, posit that Eris is the ruler of Libra, which
Interesting.
I can see because I mean I think there are certain signs that are
I would put her more in Scorpio, but yeah,
yeah yes that I think that's a potential as well, but I think there are some signs that are very misunderstood.
exactly. Libra being the top one of them.
Libra being one and Virgo being another one.
Yeah.
And I think that I can see that I mean I have well I have Mercury in Libra, but I also have two Libra sisters. And I
No,
can see
fun,
that
fun, fun.
they're not I can see that they I can see the throwing the apple part, you know, they will you know maybe sometimes play devil's advocate or you know they can see
Sometimes, most of the time.
yeah yeah they can see all sides of an
Exactly. And you know, they'll often take the side that you're not on
Mhm.
just to make a point,
Yep,
you know.
yep, yes.
And they're thought of as, you know, balanced characters, but they're not. They're extreme. They strive for equilibrium.
Right. Yeah, they got
Doesn't
the
mean
pendulum
they're always there, you know. Yeah,
going back and forth. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's the misunderstood of Libra. You're right. It's striving for balance, not achieving balance.
exactly.
You're striving for balance.
Yeah, and they
right.
move
I've just
through
not.
extremes in different
Mm,
times in their lives, you know. It's like when
Yes.
they reach a certain point, they go into the other polarity, the Aries point instead of Libra, and you know, things change. But then again, you
Nia,
know, but like, sorry?
we're Pluto and Libra generation, right? We
Yeah.
understand that.
Oh, definitely. And we encounter that in our relationships,
Yes, yes,
in our intimate relationships. It's part of our evolution.
And so
yes.
by progression, Ceres is also in Libra, and their Ceres and Pluto are kind of straddling your progressed midheaven.
Mm,
I
yeah.
mean,
Mm,
Well, I have a lot to give. That's true.
yeah,
And I'm undergoing transformation, sense of death and rebirth. That's true as well.
yeah.
I'm finding my true self, looking deep inside, and I feel very mystical and therapeutic and sexual, all words of Pluto. I'm encountering a lot of powerful people.
Mhm.
Some of them would like to remain discreet, you know. That's also part of it. And I feel I'm undergoing some kind of transformation within my career as well, because I am an astrologer and I always will be. But I really want to undertake a big writing project, whether it's
Ah,
connected to astrology or not. I want to write.
I
and you,
I I was I was wondering about that, and
Yeah.
I mean, especially your Jupiter and Gemini. Do I remember that you said that you told me that you were a journalist?
Many years, yeah. I
Yeah,
used to make my living off writing and I write poetry for many years.
yeah.
I
That's
love
that's
writing.
That, and so are you working on a writing project now?
Working on several, actually. I'm
Ah,
writing poems constantly, and I can share some if you want.
sure.
The English ones, at least.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's an astrology piece I want to take out about gender and let's say a new paradigm for astrologers about, looking into gender, parenting, and symbology in a chart.
Wow.
So like, how do you go about when you have two fathers or two mothers? Who do you attribute what to?
Mhm.
And
Ah.
how do you know if somebody is more feminine or masculine in different parts of their life and how it would affect them? What are the characteristic of transgender people or non-binary people or, you know, um, polyamorous people and so on and so forth? How can you know if somebody's sexual desires are strong and if they would express themselves outwardly or not? If something doesn't inhibit them.
Well,
These
two
are
two
interesting
things I
subjects.
notice in your progress chart that kind of speak to that is one, Venus has recently progressed into Gemini,
Hmm, that's
and
good.
and also in the last, well, maybe what, 8 years,
Hmm.
Mercury um, came to a conjunction with the Sun.
Mm.
So that probably would have been what, I would guess 8 years ago, but I wouldn't. I could be wrong. Don't quote me, but I would
We all can.
I would guess that.
8 years ago, what? It came to a conjunction?
Yeah, that
Conjunction.
Mercury would have passed up your Sun. They would have come to a conjunction. Although
Well, let's
mm,
see.
it might have been longer ago because they at this point, let's see, Mercury is moving. Well, Mercury is moving. Look at this, how fast Mercury is moving.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably could have been 8 years ago because it's moving twice as fast as the Sun. It's
So
in,
that's again 2017, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's around the time that Osiris and Isis met.
Ah, ah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So I actually looked it up and I think I was just back from living in Los Angeles and before that in New York and before that in New Delhi, India.
wow.
It
You've moved
was a
around a lot.
very,
Mm.
yeah, it was a very interesting time for me, work-wise and socially. Very a time I still remember as, I cherish the experiences and what I've learned and, gained through that time, not necessarily financially, but definitely things I treasure. Yeah,
Mm. Abundance in other ways.
definitely, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sue, there's also transiting Uranus. It just went over the progressed Mars, right? It's at 23 degrees at the minute of Taurus.
Mm,
Yes,
indeed.
you're right. Good point.
Mm.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so it just stationed very close to that. And actually, yeah,
Yeah.
it almost got back to that. So it's been going
It's been
back and forth
sewing that
over it.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, over
It's been
it,
stitching
which
it.
which kind of speaks to your
The whole process
transition.
I'm going through. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I started going through this transition at my Uranus opposition.
Ah,
Mm.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 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 So, yeah, that's the time in astrology that is characteristic to us realigning with our true selves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so I
which
will,
of course means to buy a sports car, have a tattoo, and meet a
Do you know
younger
what,
lady.
Nia? I was speaking to a friend of mine, and we talk about how cookbook astrology says Uranus opposition.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you just mentioned. I said to
excuse
them
me.
that it's actually it's the Great Awakening
Definitely.
mhm.
more than anything else. People, kind of say, oh, I can't remember the cookbook astrology term, but I'm like, you will be awakened and for the
Yeah,
good. You'll
you would
feel
remember.
liberated. Yeah.
You would remember who you promised yourself to
To
become
be,
a
yeah,
long, long time ago.
yeah,
And yes, it would be much easier for you to see how your road has differed
yes,
from that initial promise you gave
yeah.
yourself. It would be harder for you to see the great things you have done and your successes, but please don't forget them at that time. Because the worst thing you could do at this time is rush so strongly into the future that you throw away babies with bathwaters because of your haste and impatience, you know? So yeah, definitely a realignment with who we're supposed to be.
I like that.
I'm still waiting for the sports car and the tattoo. Not for the
I think you can do that
Me
anytime.
too.
um I'm the tattoo part. Sports car yeah, not this time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't
So,
think so.
so
It's
this is your,
associated too many negative things in my eyes,
I know,
I used to love
I
sports
hear you,
cars.
sister. Yes.
I used to love sports car and fancy cars because my dad used to own some.
Yeah.
And I would always ask him to picture himself in front of his Lamborghini Countach 5 or his Porsche 928, just that I could show my friends how cool my dad that is never here is, you know? But today, I dislike sports car, and every time one passes my field of vision, I'm both happy and sad that I don't have a Molotov bottle in my hand. Because I think that these cars are maybe the most radical expression of the imbalance in the distribution of wealth
Yes, and
in
I find it interesting.
in the you know general environment, in the public environment, in the public sphere. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So what I find interesting is that you say you were raised by hippies and you talk about your your father who had I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a child of the 60s. I was,
Well, my father has the same sickness that unfortunately many gurus do. You
interesting.
know, some like to amass Rolls Royces.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Some, so my father likes beautiful things,
Mm,
whether they're human, inanimate,
mm,
whether they're growing, and is a master of beauty. And I think that's his view of the world.
mm, hmm.
And
Yes.
I can say for his merit that at least the Porsche, my father is a painter. He exchanged for a painting of his.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
there you
So
go.
yeah,
Nice.
then that's a good deal.
Yeah, that that works.
Yeah.
So, this is just, I guess, real quickly. This is the time period that I was talking about when Isis and Osiris actually conjoined.
Shit,
And
I remember what happened in 2016.
okay.
Talking about my father, this all comes together because today, whether you believe it or not, is my father's birthday.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, happy birthday.
Who I haven't
Yeah.
talked with since guess when? Sue Hillard.
2007?
2016, 2017.
Oh,
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
that was where we were talking about well, Mercury.
And
Uh,
Osiris and Isis.
yeah, well, this is 2007 when they conjoined, but then
Okay.
2017, I think probably would have been when Mercury
in
went
the sun.
had gone through here and
Ah,
re
okay. So that's 2007, that's 2017. Right.
yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, Mercury would have reached uh the sun. So I mean that's and passed it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would kind of dovetail with you're saying that was when you moved on from speaking with your father, shall we say.
Mm.
Definitely. And what a pity that is, because there's not a day that passes that I don't want to hug him and ask him how he is
Yeah,
and see that he's well. And I still love him as a family member, like you love a kid. And I want, everything for his best. And the same goes for my kid sister, which isn't in touch with me. But talking about self-value and not being a martyr, um, I would only accept that if I would know that these people are not dangerous for me anymore.
right. They're on your side.
Exactly.
Yeah. And just I think just even speaking that is one step toward them hearing it.
Mm. Yeah,
I
on
think
the greater level,
yeah,
and that doesn't equate any of us from what we do here. So we can create karma, we can act correctly on the other hand, but on the greater level, I can accept with the same breath the fact that I had a very lousy father, he didn't do well at all. And I could learn a lot from it.
right.
And I needed to have that example that his soul, that I know from many lifetimes, took upon itself in a sense to teach me this very important lesson I needed to learn. And for that, I thank him, you
Yeah.
know. I hope he would have done it better. There's other ways to learn. You don't always have to have a stick between your teeth. You can have a carrot on your backside.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I always like sometimes I tell my little kid that if I didn't have such a bad father, I don't know if I would have been such a good parent,
Yeah.
you
Yes,
know?
Yeah.
absolutely. We learn and we learn what we don't want as well as learning what we do want.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess to finish up, what this says to me is that with the Mercury, when the Mercury as the progression went, Mercury came up to Jupiter, and you learn those lessons,
Uh-huh.
and then as it moved on, the sun moved into Cancer, then Mercury probably moved into Cancer, and then eventually they came together, and that was the nurturing part, the you're getting to the point where you were
Sorry for this. Yeah.
Yeah.
self-sufficient emotionally, that you were your own parent by that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in a sense, the king is dead. Long live the king.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it bears a sadness in it. Even if we have our parents in our lives and we're together with them to the very end, there always comes this time in which we become our parents' parents.
Yep.
Hmm.
That's very
And that
true.
always bear an inherent sadness
Yeah.
within it, you know?
Yes, yes, and with time, I think our perspective changes. At least mine has with my mother, who I had a fairly contentious relationship, especially in the
Yeah.
teenage years.
Hmm.
And now, with time and the fact that she's no longer on the earth, I can I can look at her life and see, oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
she had unbelievable trauma and loss, and she was doing the
Wow.
best that she could at
Yes,
the
she could.
time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best they could didn't cut it. And
Mhm.
sometimes they didn't make the best they could. That's the times we're really angry about that
Yes.
they could have done better,
Yep.
could have acted differently. They chose not to, in a
Yeah, they
sense.
should have in our eyes.
And yeah, and I think in these places lie deep places that are very important for us to align with and transcend characteristics that we inherited genetically and emotionally and mentally because we suckled their behavior around us all the time, their words and their patterns of thinking. And astrologically, we all know we inherit astrological patterns from our parents and siblings, Like we all have the same. Like it's funny enough, I have a half brother and a half sister. My half sister is for my mother, and my half brother is for my father. They don't have any blood relations, the two of them, but we all carry the same signatures.
Right. And you're all connected through you,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fun. I know Rob has a favorite question
Favorite question?
he likes to ask when we're wrapping up. So go for it,
Yeah.
Rob.
Not that I need more books in my life, but
Mhm.
I'm a bookworm and I love reading, especially,
Be proud.
self-knowledge, just, yeah. So I wanted to ask, apart from astrology books, what
Yes.
books have inspired you in your life that the
Okay.
audience could even look at
So
themselves
I
into
must
reading?
be humble and first and foremost speak about, like I've had many favorites books that have accompanied me. I remember my first favorite book was The Tales of Narnia, as a kid,
Ah,
Yes.
and like The Lion, the Wardrobe, and The Witch, the
Oh,
Lion, the
I love
Wardrobe.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it was The Lord of the Rings. And I
Okay.
actually used to carry The Lord of the Rings with me always. So in when I finished my high school, they actually wrote down that I carry The Lord of the Rings with me all the time. And
aw,
to this day, I find inspiration from the words of Jean-Raoul, Ronald Tolkien. Um, but I must say, I loved Fire from Heaven by Marie Renault, which talks about the childhood years up to the age of 17 of Alexander the Great.
oh wow.
And Marie Renault is both a good uh, romantic, writer and a great historian of that period. So she knows how to write, and she knows
Mm.
exactly what was on the shelf by the bed at the time and what was the daily rituals like. And that's a combination I love because it's very rich and authentic. And so that's one of them. And inspired me. Jalaluddin Rumi inspires me, the poet.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I thought of one before that I wanted to share with you, but now I can't remember which one it was. Allah.
So many
Uh,
books, so little time.
Literally.
From
um,
the Jupiter and Gemini,
yeah, 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 opposed to Neptune.
yeah, opposed to
Um,
Neptune. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
opposed to Neptune. But I'm sure I'll remember the minute we're off.
Well,
I,
that's
I
okay. You can send it to me and I'll put it in the description of the
Yeah.
video.
cool.
And yeah, along with your contact information, so that
Yes.
people
I'd love that. I appreciate that.
can get in touch with you if they want or learn more about you. Um,
I would love that. Thank you
yeah.
for that.
And then my
Um,
favorite question,
yeah,
to wrap it all up, is what do you do in your spare time?
that's a great question. Well, my most favorite thing to do is be with my kid. That's the first thing I love to do with my spare time. And
Awesome.
um, it's wonderful that I can see it as spare time, parenting, as something
Yes.
joyful and not like
A
not,
task.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that's something I enjoy doing the most. But other than that, I love martial arts.
Ah,
I love nature, being inspired by nature, by sense, by beauty, by the beauty of the human heart and mind, very much. I love high quality humans. And in that sense, heightening love as well, and making love and heightening life and enjoying pleasure and good food and good wine and good company, like any good Taurus is, you know,
in the last degree,
in the last degree.
imposing
Just
all of
before
it.
moving into Gemini, and yeah, I don't have time for that. Yeah, I'll just taste this and taste that, and I have to go. I'm needed elsewhere. Um, let's just indulge. And and that's my mother's teaching. Like my mother always said that, we're here to enjoy first and foremost. That this is our holiest task, having contentment in our life. But being a hippie as she was, that was a bit, we'll feast today because tomorrow we die, but we don't end up dying. We just end up feasting one day after the other, So I've learned from that and I became much more Saturnian in a way
Yeah.
in my beliefs. And I decided that if I want to remain free and wild and sometimes even naughty, I have to be responsible when I'm swimming in the deep, wherever this is, because there be monsters there. And if I'm not a responsible swimmer, I better not go into the deep because I'll probably traumatize myself and others around me to the extent that I wouldn't care or couldn't even be the free creature that I want to remain.
So I just heard your Scorpio ascendant with Uranus and
Uranus on the Scorpio
Scorpio.
ascendant, yeah, in retrograde.
Exactly. Yes, I love it. Oh, Nia, this has been so much fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I look forward
Me
to
too.
talking
And
with
it's
you
been
again.
healing for me. And I want to thank you both for giving me this time with you two, which
Absolutely. Uh,
Likewise. Thank you.
which I
awesome.
treasure. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.